A quick note before today's episode. While I'm a professor of nursing at the University of Minnesota, this podcast, Midlife Unmasked, is a personal project and separate from my professional responsibilities at the university. This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered professional medical advice. Please consult your own healthcare provider before making any decisions related to your health and wellness. In keeping with my role as a nurse researcher and educator, I'm here to bring evidence-based information to improve overall health and well-being. It is my goal to be a trusted source of information and to build this community where we can all learn, grow, and share together. With that said, let's jump into today's conversation. Hey Midlifers, welcome to the Midlife Unmasked podcast. I'm your host, Robin Austin, a nurse researcher and educator, and your guide to navigating everything from healthy aging and wellness to big stuff like caring for aging parents, mastering work-life balance, and discovering your next great adventure. So are you ready? Let's do this. Hey Midlifers, welcome to our podcast today. We're super excited for this episode called The Next Chapter, Midlife Careers, Strategy, and Self-Leadership. We welcome our special guest, Jennifer Olson, who is a transformational healthcare executive, award-winning strategist, and respected board member with over 2 decades of experience driving enterprise-level impact in complex health systems. She's the CEO, founder, and managing partner of BlueInnovo Advisors, a strategic advisory firm reshaping healthcare by bridging operational excellence with bold, future-focused strategy. Jennifer is a proud award winner of the Healthcare Hero Award from the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal in 2023. And in 2018, she was named a Real Power 50 Award winner and also the Top Women in Business by the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal. Jennifer began her career as a management engineer at the University of Wisconsin Hospital and Clinics. She owned her strategic acumen as a senior consultant in Deloitte's consulting healthcare and strategy practice. Jennifer holds an MBA in management and healthcare and a BBA in finance from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Originally from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, she now splits her time between healthcare innovation, cheering on the Packers, and her husband, John, and their dog, Tigger. Thanks so much for joining us, and let's dive right in. Hey, Midlifers, welcome to our podcast today. I'm super excited for our guest today. Jennifer Olson is here to talk about leadership in midlife, career change, pivots, all those great things that we talk about. And so we're just so excited that you are here. Thank you for spending your time with us today. The first question I really like to provide for us is really to give us a synopsis of kind of your background and what led you to kind of what you're doing today.
Well, I am so excited to be here. So Robin, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I know you gave the fantastic overview. So I'm just going to say, my pivot for me really was a culmination of a few different things. So first of all, I was the COO and I had experienced the murder of George Floyd. I had COVID. I had a nursing strike. And while we were having some real struggles in the provider side, healthcare financials. And so I kept trying to do things more and more and more. The female response was, I can be at work more. I can do more for my team. I can come in more. I can take another shift. I can do everything. And my more was increasingly not better. I think concurrently, I would just say I was restless. I was irritated. There was something that I felt that professionally my work pace was fast and I wasn't being met with a work pace that was as fast as I wanted to go. And I needed to listen to that. And this has been a hallmark of my career where I listen to that every once in a while and sometimes more closely than others. But I knew that I needed to challenge myself differently for the next stage in my career. And so with those two things coming together, I knew that this was the opportune time for me to really think about doing something different with my career. And that's how BlueInnovo was formed.
That's amazing. And I think you hit on something that's so important is that there's like an itch. There's something, a friend of mine used to call it like she felt prickly. And, that's just like, I think it's a warning sign or a signal that there might be a change coming, or to pursue that idea that it's okay to feel that way, but then to step forward into it. It's definitely a part of it. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think we get used to one narrative in our mind of where we're going and what that should look like. And so it takes some courage and some time to stop and look at that narrative and say, is that still the narrative that I want to follow? Or do I want to think about something different?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thrilled to hear more about your story as well as we kind of go through our conversation. But so you've held some very influential leadership roles, which is super exciting and empowering, and now leading your own strategic firm. And so really what inspired your career pivot, and how did you know it was the right time for this chapter?
So I think I just sort of gave that overview of why it was the right time. For me, all those things culminating together, it was the right time. I will also say physically, for me, I was having migraines. I had gained some weight. I knew my body was telling me what I wasn't listening to. And for me, it was time to make a pivot. It was time to listen to myself, and I couldn't avoid the signs anymore. And so I think this is also where, from a mental health and physical health, my career for me is one of my number one components of my life. It's super important to me, to who I am as a person. And so I needed to listen, and I did. And that's where I made this pivot.
That's amazing. And so with that question, I think too, when so many women are feeling this way about, I need to make a pivot, did you go to a specific, this is not necessarily on our list, but did you go to like a trusted source or a mentor or seek out advice on your own? Like, how did you I think of how did you do that? Like, how did you know the next steps?
I think a few things. I had a few aha moments in my day-to-day at work where there were some things that would typically give me joy that I wasn't feeling joy. And so it was a candid reflection on, what used to fill my cup is not filling my cup. There was a candid conversation with my husband and my partner and my best friend who said, hey, this is not you. You're reaching a mental health level where you're not healthy and you're not well, and you're more unwell than well, more frequently than not. And I'm worried about you. And I was able to say, I'm worried about me too. And it's taken me 1.5 years to be able to say that, but I think that was really pivotal for us. And then I'd say my trusted advisors. I've had a truth posse is what I call mine. I've had that circle of, my dad's in there, my best friend's in there, but I have a cohort of really close, that personal board of advisors, and they all were looking at me at this juncture in my career and lifestyle and saying, it's time for you to take a different path. And I don't think any of them really knew what that path would be. I think I am blessed in that they gave me grace about what might be next. But I'm still exploring that. But I think it was this juxtaposition of life and health and a moment where it was that joy in my life was not there, and I wanted it. And I honestly feel like I deserved it too. I'm in my early 50s. Life shouldn't be this hard at this moment in time.
Yeah, so true. Thank you for sharing that. That's so insightful, I think, for other people listening to say, oh, I don't have to feel this way. And this is something that I should pay attention to and start to explore, because I don't think we give ourselves enough permission to do that either. As women, we just, as we know, we take on until either we're going to break or something breaks for us. Right. And so,
100%. And at some point, a long weekend or a week at the cabin is not going to fix it. Right. It's not enough to refill our cup and resustain our health and our well-being to the point where we need it to be all that we can and want to be for our families, our friends, our organizations, our volunteer activities. It's just not enough. And that's when we need to give ourselves permission and others in our circles to just take that break that's really needed.
Yeah, that's great advice. So kind of going into this next question, midlife often brings reflection and reinvention. And I'll share a quote I saw this morning that we shared before recording, but I want to say it again for our audiences. But then how do you guide high-performing professionals, especially women, through career transitions at this life stage? And the quote I saw this morning in preparing for today was really the woman who was talking about reinventing is not failure. And I think we often as women, if we do pivot or we're reinventing or reimagining, we think something bad happened or we were wrong in some way. And so how do you like, what is your advice for women at this stage, especially for women in career transitions right now at this phase?
So Robin, I'm going to give you something really practical for your users. And I will also say, as women, sometimes we give a piece of advice to ourselves or others, and it always comes with like this veil of judgment about how do I answer? Should I answer the way I really want to, or with some framing that is the way I feel like I'm supposed to answer it? And so I tell my early mentees or my career transition coaching clients a list of 50. So take everything that is important to you, and your list now is very different than it was when you were 20 or 30 or 40. So at this juncture in your career, what is most important to you? The first 10, the first 20 are going to come really easy. The next 30, keep going. Keep putting the brainstorm and the stuff on the list. But then go back through it and really look without that lens of judgment. Give yourself permission to say, what is super important to me right now? And important to me and my family and who I want to be for this next iteration of my career. It doesn't have to be forever. It is for the moment and for right now. And give yourself grace that it might have changed from where you were. Money. At one point in your career when you didn't have any was super important. Or you might have been laid off and wow, you've burned through some savings and now you're looking at it and your money is more important than the title or the role because it's a function of happiness. Or it might be flexibility. So we had a ton and now it might not be as flexible as it once was. So again, without that veil of judgment, go through that top 50 and then let that guide you. Let that sink in a little bit for where it takes you for your next step. But it really opens up the kinds of discussions you have to have next. And so I use that again. It's one of the most simple tools. The trick is that taking that judgment away from yourself as you make the list and you make the priorities.
I think it's such good advice to revisit what's important to you. Because like you said, when we started, you're off and running, like you're just going and you got your head, you're in the middle of families or care, other adult things, other adulting responsibilities, but we don't evaluate like, hey, is this working anymore? Is this really what I want? And so I think that's a really, really good advice is to start with that list. And I think you said like the top 10, top 20, easy. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I really don't want this anymore. And I want more flexibility because I want to be able to go for a walk at my lunch hour or what have you. That's practical, concrete advice to just start there. And then you can start to see where you might want to make changes.
And it's amazing how hard it is for people.
I know.
So
yeah.
Ladies, do it. Try it.
And I think too, it's also like we had talked before too, it's giving yourself that permission. It's okay to also want something different. It's okay to say this isn't working anymore.
Right.
And we, as we don't really do that very often.
So creativity might be one that's in there.
Yeah.
And variation in your job. You could be really good at what you've done for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you might want to try something that you're not an ace at just because you're a little bored.
Yeah.
I am trying some new things that I've never tried before and I am not very good at them. And wow, it's humbling, but it's fun. And some of that is the trying something new and the learning and meeting new people. It's scary, but it's also super rewarding. And so I think for me, that is now much higher on the list than it was before. It does drive a whole lot of self-reflection. And you might shuffle it around a little bit. I'd also say give yourself some grace on the timing of it. You might have to do it a couple times to really test, allow yourself the ability to explore that list a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. I had a mentor once tell me that you really know you're growing when you're uncomfortable and you're doing something that feels uncomfortable. And I said, well, then I must be growing a lot because I'm uncomfortable all the time. But it's so true. And it's okay it's because it's new. It feels different. It feels like, but that's okay. That's because it's new. It doesn't mean you can't learn it over time. I think that's the other part that it gets scary. So they're like, I don't want to do that. I should know what I'm doing. I'm in life. I should have this experience and nothing should feel scary. Well, it's okay to feel that way. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Great advice. I also am so honored that you are also recognized as a healthcare hero, a top woman in business. Like those are amazing, amazing awards and accolades. And so how has your definition of leadership evolved over the course of your career and especially now at midlife?
This is a super good question. Those awards are amazing. I will always say it takes a village. So every leader is dependent on his or her team. And so it takes that village to get those awards. And so I will always give kudos to the rest of my team. Personally, as a leader, my values, so integrity, mission alignment, impact are really important to me. And I don't think those have changed. So those have been something that has been constant. I think the veracity of which I believe in those have kind of ebbed and flowed over the course of my career in different projects. As a woman and as a woman who has been in a lot of significant positions and has been blessed to serve in those, you like to be liked. I mean, you hate it when you have to make a tough decision that, some people are really not going to be liked, or the decision's going to not be liked by many. But your job is to make tough decisions. And I think as I've grown, I've gotten more and more comfortable making courageous decisions. I feel like that's one of my leadership hallmark, is that people knew I would make a decision. Without all the right information, without all the information, I will make a decision and I will tell you why we made a decision. I think that's gotten easier for me as I've gotten older to trust my own gut. It was harder when I was younger to just, I think I had false bravado. I'm just going to make a decision. Let's go, because I was impatient. Now I feel like I have some of the toolkits to back that up, and I'll make a decision because my risk tolerance is probably a little bit higher than most. But I feel like my values, I can earn the trust and respect to say, team, follow me, because I am doing this with integrity, with a desire for impact, and in alignment with our vision and our mission. I think so courage to make a decision, curiosity, I think, is definitely something. Instead of feeling, you mentioned this just previously, instead of feeling like we have to have all the answers, Robin, I think I'm more in this phase of, I don't need to be the know-it-all. I don't have to prove my seat at the table. I now have to ask better questions, because there are many, many smarter people than me around. I need to make sure they get their voice at the table. I need to make sure we get all of the talent so that we come up with the best solutions. And I think that courage and curiosity to keep those voices coming to the table to bring their best selves forward is probably my biggest shift in my leadership persona over the years. And that's the one, it's fun. I mean, honestly, I've learned so much more over the last couple of years as I've been able to take a seat back and ask more questions, especially in areas where I don't know as much. AI, data platforms, startups, medical devices, et cetera. I have been in one silo for so many years, and now it's fun to see how things intersect.
Absolutely. And I think it's the key, asking the questions. I know I'm earlier in my career too, I just felt like, I'll figure it out. I'll do it. I don't want to ask a lot of questions. I don't want to bug people, whatever. But the more I'm like, well, I have to figure it. Like I need to ask, like, I don't know I can't move forward unless I'm just also curious. Like, what's the rationale? Like why, I've always told other people, like, I can execute a plan. I just need to know what the plan is and why. And so I think it's being able to ask those questions and be comfortable with asking them. Because I think a lot of times it's earlier in your career, just like, oh, this is what I'm given, I'll just figure it out as I go, kind of thing. So that's really, really good advice as well. And I love the idea of being interdisciplinary. We can't do it alone and in silos to make better. It's too complex now. I think in the space of healthcare, that's my lens as well. Things are just too complex and they're moving too quickly, and there's lives at stake. There's patients at the very end of some of these decisions. So I think it's a great,
I think that's part of the exciting part too. I mean, you never know what the engineer is going to be able to bring to the table, or the nurse or the respiratory therapist to a chronic problem in nursing can bring some solutions that we haven't thought about because we haven't allowed the teams to problem solve together.
Exactly.
And I know we are going to experience some breakthroughs in how we care for patients and families, because we are now more collegial and we are more intertwined in how we are caring for patients together than ever before.
Yep, I would agree completely. I see the shift, and I see even how we're educating some of I think of how we're educating our new nurses, undergrad students, even our doctoral students. We're trying to get everybody in the same room at the same time having conversations. If you're going to be the CNO or you're trying to be the chief nursing informatics officer, what have you, they have to be working together from day one. So I really like that and hope it does stick. And I think that it's making certain we'll make better decisions and move probably a little bit quicker. I think that will be the norm. Yeah. Wonderful. Great advice. So there's the next question I want to talk to about is, I took a picture of Instagram this morning because it was a statement that I really loved that I want to share as well. But this leads into our other question is, so what are common barriers and inner narratives do you see holding women back from stepping into bigger leadership roles or making bold changes in their midlife? And I literally saw this on Instagram this morning, and I'll read it. And it said, bold women change the world. They say yes to opportunities that they aren't fully ready for. They speak up even when their voice is shaky, and they chase dreams that others are too afraid to pursue. Be bold. The world needs you to be brave. And so when I was like, oh, that fits with our question. So I had to say that comment. So,
and I love that. I'm just going to be honest. I was not, I am known for being outspoken and direct and having a point of view. I'm known for that. And yet I found that this was interesting. So my mom never really talked about menopause, and I didn't talk about this with my friends until I was sort of deep into perimenopause and sort of experiencing what everybody else was, which is like, I was flummoxed to work, was why I was supposed to be great. And I was supposed to be calm, and I'm supposed to be all this while, here's a hot flash. Here's a moment of rage. Here's, I forgot a word. Here's I didn't get any sleep last night, but I'm supposed to come and look like a perfect human the next day. And there's this just tsunami of menopause and hormones that are known life disruptor symptoms. And yet we're just supposed to, all that stuff is like this ignored thundercloud over our head while we're supposed to show up and execute. And it's such crap. And no one talks about it in the workplace. No one says, oh, I'm going to give her an extra little half credit point for all that stuff because she did that and she rocked at her job. Or I'll give her half a credit for that meeting for missing a word because she's in perimenopause. And the guys don't need the half credit point. There's just, they already get the half plus credit points just for being who they are. And so I don't want anything given to women that we shouldn't earn and deserve. But I do think this is a huge factor for us that we aren't talking about. And it's almost like, ask to play baseball and go up to bat. But by the way, we're going to ask you to bat with one arm like strapped behind your back and one leg in a gunny sack, hopping around the bases. So we already have a steep curve, and this just makes it a little bit steeper. And I think we as women can talk about it more, and we are. I think medicine is starting to address it, which is great. But I will say it. I think women are also women's biggest critics. So while we're observing the problem, we're also feeding into it, and we're not giving grace. So I would say, I'm in the middle of this. I'm in the middle of this conversation. I appreciate that you asked the question. I love the positivity of be bold, say your point, fight, do what you're going to do to the best of your ability and lead through it. I also see this as another element of, yes, we're stepping away from the workforce. We're saying, I need a break because you know what? It's damn hard. And I needed a break and I took it. I don't think that's going to negatively impact my career, but my career is indeed different. And I think more people need to talk about that. But I also think we're seeing more of that across women. And we need to have conversations like this so that it becomes normalized, and we can also address it functionally. So it's not so dang hard.
Exactly. And I think, like you said right there too, having more conversations and bringing awareness for employers that there's a segment of your workforce that are highly productive, that are also having, going through midlife. And so what are resources that you can provide to maintain and retain of these high performing individuals? And I think you probably saw the statistic as well. It was a while back. 1 in 5 women leave the workforce because of menopause symptoms. And to me, that's creating a huge economic gap or vacuum. And it's not okay. It's just not okay. That's a bold action right there as well for employers to step up into that space and provide the resources and support. But
I think when you look at female pivot points, pregnancy,
yep,
menopause, taking care of elder parents, I think it's a societal issue that we do have to address and say, how do we come at this together? I don't think women solving it alone is going to solve the issue at all. I think we have to look at this holistically and say there is an economic benefit to us being in the workforce, to us commanding a table, to us having significant jobs and roles, being at the board table, because we've got the data that shows that the conversation is better, the financial outcomes are better, the economic performance is better when we are at the table. So I think it's a worthy problem for us to be solving jointly as a society.
I would agree. And I loved your comment too about that. We were speaking briefly before we started recording as well that, we're also our own worst critics to each other. And I think that hopefully that conversation is somewhat changing as well by us bringing more awareness around midlife, and that we are our own posse. We are our own community. And that was one of the things that kind of jump started me to want to kind of create this podcast, is to create a community for empowerment and support, specifically at this phase of life. And so you really nailed it as well, that we have to be bold, but then supportive of one another. When you see a woman being bold, you high five, you don't judge, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they slip up, you dust her off, you say, hey, great job. Here's the little bit of feedback. Take it or leave it. What can I do to help you next time?
Yep. Absolutely. I've had great mentors in my life. That's what I think is so empowering as well. And I think back at the advice I've been given and seeing potential in me before I even saw it in myself in a way. And so I think that fostering that within ourselves and amongst our communities will be phenomenal.
I think sponsors as well. So we talk a lot about mentors. I think we have some work to do about sponsors. So making sure we're talking about those high performers and those high potential women in the room when they're not in the room, in the key places and spaces where it makes a difference, to be talking about them. And I think it's an art that we aren't performing enough for women to women. And we're doing a better job at mentoring. We really are. But I think sponsoring is a key difference, that we've got a little bit of room. But think about the opportunity if we nail that. I think we've got a ton of potential there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I attended a session at one of the conferences I was at last year that really talked about kind of this midlife career vacuum and where, how to move forward in this kind of phase of life. And they brought that up, with the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. So would you mind sharing just a little bit of what each one, because that was a little bit new to me as well, but I think that's a key critical piece that we can also share with the audience about those two differences.
Well, I think for me, the mentoring is the piece where I have a relationship with a person. I am asking key questions. I have a goal with them. They have a goal for themselves. And it is typically driven by the mentee, but there's a growth and a development and a person giving advice, but also asking that mentee some key questions. The sponsor understands, may be a mentor, but is a person who is able to say, I see Robin. I see Robin's got great potential. And when I'm in the boardroom, I am talking about Robin and building her up. I'm talking about her skills. When I'm at the executive table and there's a project where there's an opportunity for us to use Robin's skill set, I'm going to volunteer Robin for that opportunity. So it's creating a buzz about a high performer when that person's not in the room. So your sponsee might not ever know that you were being sponsored by that person. Ideally you would, because wow, they make a difference for you. But it's really when they make place and space for excellent people, men or women, when they're not in the room. And it's creating a reputation and a brand and giving credibility through that by extending your brand and your credibility around that other individual, and therefore lifting up both.
Yeah, that's a great, I think, distinction. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for that as well, to really uplift individuals, their advocate as well. I think that's another key component to career pivoting, career changing, moving up in a career ladder, so to speak, if that's your goal. So thank you for sharing that distinction as well. And now focusing too on the BlueInnovo advisors and focusing on bridging that operational excellence that you have and experience with the future focused strategy. And so how can midlife professionals apply that kind of mindset into their career and also life planning?
So at BlueInnovo advisors, if we're going to help an organization or a company or an individual with a project or a coaching plan, you don't start with the tactics first. You kind of start with the big picture. And so I would invite your listeners, our colleagues in their midlife stage, to say, I want you to take a step back and look at your box. Look at your career box that you gave yourself and make it bigger. So most of us have been working with the same professional box that we drew ourselves however many years ago. So for me, I had a provider track for a health system, and I was working my way up, and I was doing all the right roles, from a VP to a chief strategy officer, chief operating officer. My box was a trajectory of career plan, and I was moving along it. And that was all I ever thought about for my career box. I needed to take the opportunity and the pause in my midlife moment to say, what else is there? If I had the opportunity to go back to my little self, to my little girl who wanted to be brave and bold, and say, what else could you do in this universe? Where else could you have a legacy? What else would you draw? I draw my box for this next journey in my career differently. And so I would say, consider your passions. Consider what's next and sit with those for a little bit. Get uncomfortable with it. Let yourself sit with something that might be totally different than what you've been doing. This is where some people may make huge pivots. So going from a healthcare executive to a gardener, a insurance salesperson to something totally introverted. Or it might be, I'm going from one healthcare segment to another, or I'm returning to my consulting and coaching roots in just a different way. So it's a flavor of what I have done, but it's a different box that fills my cup in a different way. So the second piece is experiment. Sit with it and experiment. Don't rush the process. So I think this is one thing. We want to have the answer. We want to get there, but do some tests, experiment, savor this discomfort a little bit as you think about what's next. And then I would say stoke your inner courage and jump towards that what's next. And some of you will want a project plan that has all the measures and all the tactics and all the steps. And others will say, I want one measure and call it good. At BlueInnovo, we will work with you to figure out which one of those it might need to be. But I would say, hold yourself accountable. Give yourself at least one measure of success, because we've all got that little person somewhere inside of us that is the doubter. That is the complainer. That is the, oh, you should have done what was safe. That is, oh, you don't have any clients this month. Oh my God, the sky is falling. That forces us to go into that scarcity mindset instead of that abundance mindset. And so for this one, I would say the key to our excellence in whatever is next is having a picture, sitting with it if it's a little uncomfortable for us, and then putting a process in place and a measure to say, yeah, that's actually where I wanted to go. And I am great with where I am getting to, and holding ourselves accountable to it so we can quiet that nasty little voice that comes out every once in a while.
That's great advice. And I think the accountable piece is a key component of that as well. Just, it could be a very small kind of measure, like you said, but at least it gives you something to also work towards. And it's not always the outcome, it's the process of getting there. And so I think that's such an important component of like how you're reshaping your box, but giving yourself grace to get there, that it may look different than what you had thought, but also the fact that it may change, and that's okay as well. So I love those concrete steps that people can take to kind of put in a plan in place. And sometimes it doesn't seem as scary when you break it down into smaller chunks as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I like that a lot. When I first started, I was really excited to start this podcast, but also super, super scared. And I said, if I do 10 episodes, that would be my measure. That'd mean I'd be good. And then that was like my goal. And so I'm almost there. So, but it was help to have something tangible to work towards as well. So yeah, great advice. So one other question is, so women listening who feel stuck or uncertain in their careers, what's one piece of advice or a first step that they could take when exploring what's next without fear of getting it wrong?
So you just touched on this. For me, it's breaking it down a little bit, even mentally. So for me, especially being in healthcare, this may not work for everybody, but it's taking a little bite, taking a small piece of the elephant and saying, what can I do for a little step towards that goal? So you wanted to do 10 podcasts, you had to start with one. You had to do one. And maybe you even had to, write a script or write some questions first. No matter how small your step is, it's a start. And I get in the habit, if I just can't get over something and I know I'm actually getting in my own way, I almost have to test my own reality of what would happen if I failed. Like, what's the worst thing that would happen to me if I didn't succeed at this? Because we get a little scared of not being successful. Well, not being successful, what is the failure? And so for me, it was, am I going to hurt somebody? Is someone going to die or bleed? Again, remember, I'm in healthcare. So that's a pretty big bar. I mean, that's pretty easy to dust your butt off a little bit and get a fist bump from a friend. Not much is going to make me bleed or die. So it gives you a little chutzpah to go ahead and try some small things and get going. And once you're going, you can kind of get a little momentum and go further. But I think being real with yourself mentally about, well, what's really going to happen if I fail or I mess up? It's not really usually that bad. If you're the cup half full, what happens if you succeed? Geez, lots of cool stuff can happen if you succeed. So again, it's balancing that abundance mindset versus that scarcity mindset. But that fear of failure is real. So address it. Make it as minimal as you can possibly make it and go.
That's great advice. And I think you touched on something, is to reality check the mindset of what's going to happen if you fail. Like, I think we conjure up all these things in our brain to really be in our own way. And that's certainly, I've had that conversation with myself many times. Like, I'm in my own way and I'm making up stuff that's not even reality about if worst case scenario were to happen, which it probably isn't going to happen. I think that reality check is so critical because we tell ourselves false narratives all the time.
All the time.
Yep. And it's just not, that's so getting in our own way. And it's hard to, when you're in the moment of it, it's hard to get out of it. But like, I think it's just those small concrete steps that we can take for ourselves to constantly move forward, I think. But it's so real for my own self, I would say too, that I have a great idea. And then like immediately I'm trying to talk myself out of it because of, oh, it's a dumb idea. It's never going to work. Or I don't have enough credentials, or I don't have enough stuff, that kind of thing.
I've been there. I am there on 15 things on my to-do list or want-to-do list. I would also say sometimes we make it so big. We make that, ooh, wouldn't this be cool? And then we add to it and add to it and add to it. And then we kind of kill the dream by never making it a minimal viable product. And so sometimes we have to ratchet ourselves back and go, well, no, let's make it the dream a little smaller so that there's a chance of it. Let's test it. Let's see if it could be something bigger, but you almost dream it so big that then you can't actually get it started. So we're interesting creatures, and I think we can manage ourselves and get out of our own way a little bit. But I think as we are doing today, you can also have a little humor with it. And I think going back to that truth posse concept, I love having a few good women in my life and men who can poke a little fun, keep us a little bit down to earth. Yes, who we can grab a little bit around when things are really bugging us to the nth degree, but who can also just make this phase of life kind of fun and say, if anything else, try something new and see how it goes.
Yep. I love that. And I love, you have to be having fun. I've kind of at this point too, it's like, I don't want to, I as in healthcare as well, it can be a little dim and grim and like, you want to be able to have your colleagues and have fun and work together, but you have to make it joyful at some point which we got at the very beginning, what we talked about. If your joy isn't there, how can you get that back? So great advice. I love that. So kind of my final question that I like to ask all of our guests is, what is one final piece of advice or one piece that you would give to every woman entering her 40s and 50s to prepare for a vibrant and empowered life?
For me, this works, and I hope it works for you. It's trust your gut. You've nurtured it. You've honed it. Now it's time for you to actually use it. And I think this is one of our most underutilized senses that we have. And I think it's a gift. So I would say use it to be that middle-aged woman that you want to be, and go soar and trust it. So trust your gut.
I love that. It's so true. I think like we were talking about before, you instantly try to negate it or talk yourself out of it. But if you're getting that feeling for a reason, listen. You have to start listening to that.
You do.
Yeah, I love that advice. Anything else you'd like?
It's got 50 some years of experience now. It knows what it's talking about.
Exactly. Good and bad.
It is your early warning indicator of a lot. You trust it as a mom.
Yep.
You trust it as a wife. Trust it as a professional, and let it take you where you need to go.
I love that. That's amazing. Thank you again so much for your time today. I really appreciate your excellence, your expertise, sharing your advice. It's always great to talk to another leader and woman in healthcare space as well. So thank you again for your time. I so appreciate it. And our audience will love this conversation.
This has been fun. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. That's a wrap on this episode of Midlife Unmasked. I hope you found inspiration and a few key takeaways. If today's episode resonated with you, please be sure to share it with someone else that could also benefit. And don't forget, this podcast is here for you. If you have a topic or a question you'd like us to explore, please send it our way. Your feedback helps us reach even more listeners on this shared journey. You can find us on social media and our website, midlife-unmasked.com. That's midlife-unmasked.com. And the links are also in our show notes. Until next time, keep unmasking your potential, embracing the possibilities, and living your best midlife with courage and confidence. Take care and see you next week.